This is so exciting, guys, because this is actually from thehumanist.com, and it was written by the friend of the show and a friend of mine and a friend of the ACA, president and founder, Miss Mendiza Thomas. So this particular article was actually reposted in February the 15th of 2022, and it actually talked about how Black History Month should not only just be like the same thing that we would normally see a lot, like, oh, we're going to talk about Dr. King, we're going to talk about Malcolm X, we're going to talk about Frederick Douglass, we're going to talk about, you know, all that other great stuff. And oh, and just to preface that, Mendiza Thomas is the president and founders of the president and founder of the Black Non-Believers, established in 2011. And going back to what I was talking about previously concerning the article, that she starts out, I'm just going to read a little bit from it. For Black History Month in 2012, African Americans for Humanism, now defunct, launched a major marketing campaign featuring billboards and public transportation ads in 7 major U.S. cities. The campaign focused on historic figures and modern-day individuals who have questioned religion. 10 years later, in 2022, Black atheists, humanists, free-thinking voices are now more publicly acknowledged. And this is in no small part due to the work of organizers like the Black Non-Believers and Black Skeptics, who have broken barriers with features in major media publications, including the one with 5 Fierce Humanists cover story in 2018, and events like Women of Color Beyond Belief Conference, which I had the pleasure of speaking at. And she goes on to say that my organization, the Black Non-Believers, has particularly focused on increasing the presence of atheists and religious doubters in the Black community, as well as providing much needed support and empowerment. We also prominently highlight Blacks who historically have either never believed or have shed their religious identities over time. It is important to acknowledge and educate others about these iconic figures who have contributed much to our country's framework and yet had little to no belief whatsoever. And I'm going to go ahead and stop right there so we can open up the floor. But one of the things that I did want to read a little bit from Laura's notes, and then I'm going to move it on to Malty and Phil, that she said that this is a great article for showcasing efforts in educating and advocating. But I think that there's an underlining message that is even more important. Marginalized groups suffer so many injustices and have many unique struggles that people outside the group cannot fully understand. But when you are a marginalized group within that group, the struggle intensifies. People who are Black and LGBTQ or Black and atheists have so much more to contend with than is already stratifying and institutionalized forms of racism and discrimination. Add to that women, disabled, foreign accent, or trouble speaking English, mental health concerns, the issues compound. And she wanted to go forth about talking about the mental and social implications. But one of the things that I really do like about this article is that it really got a chance to highlight the work that's really being done in advocating for people who are agnostic, who are skeptics, who are free thinkers, who happen to look like me. And because often, as Mendiza said, is that we don't necessarily get a chance to really learn about or really celebrate, iconic figures from our past that had a huge impact on basically the discourse of advocacy, specifically for African Americans throughout American history. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and football it to my colleagues as we discuss all this other stuff. And I'm going to actually send it over to you, Malty, if you don't mind taking it away.
Yeah. I read Mendiza's piece, and what it did is it kind of allowed me, as definitely not as from an outsider looking in, to get some perspective of that. But it also got me looking down some rabbit holes, and I came across some legislation that I didn't know about, or if I did, I had forgot, which is House Resolution 40, and the push by the NAARC for it to actually get to be presented on the floor. For those of you that don't know, that the NAA
NARC.
RC,
Yeah,
NARC, yeah,
yeah.
is the National African American Reparations Commission.
Commission, yeah.
And they're pushing this bill to establish a commissional study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans, just as we had with Japanese Americans for reparations for what was that what was the name of that bill, 9066, where they had all of their rights taken away from them and they were put in internment camps in War II. In fact, that we just had the anniversary of the signing of that bill this month. But that's neither here nor there. But yeah, so I thought it was very interesting. Listened to Representative Sheila Jackson Lee from Texas talking about it. She's heading, I think, a push for this to be brought before the full House. So yeah, it's interesting. I'm glad that there is things moving forward, and that we have things like as many people, Human Rights Watch, the American Humanist Association, over 360 national, international, state, and local organizations have signed on to this, saying that they want it to be heard. So it's again, what they want to do is establish an expert commission just to study the legacy of slavery and how it failed to address the harms that stemmed from it, such as which are innumerable, and I'm sure we'll get into.
Sure thing. I would love to touch a little bit on HR 40. I was saying on the green room that HR 40 was actually a bill that was introduced to the floor at first in 1989 after the Japanese bill, the Civil Liberties Bill of 1988, was signed by Ronald Reagan. And with that particular history of that bill, and that was actually to pay Japanese Americans who were either interned or their immediate descendants reparations for the harm that was exacted from the event that happened in the early 40s during World War II. Because Japan, as we know, was part of the Axis powers aligned with Germany. And it was a panic even for actual citizens who happened to be of Japanese descent, who were interned, their rights were taken away, their property was taken away, and they were interned for about 5 years. I want to say up to 5 years. I may be wrong. Somebody can correct me. But so when they established a commission, went around the country and actually spoke on the ills and the harms that happened to being exacted, and then the commission came up with recommendations, and at that particular time it was decided to go ahead and pay out about $20,000 per person or their descendant if that person is no longer living, and then that also extended into, I believe, like others like from Guam, and I believe that there was a revisitation to that particular bill under Obama that paid out additional funds. So Representative John Conyers got the idea like, hey, I want to see if we can do something similar for African Americans who were descended from enslaved Africans or descendants of chattel slavery, as far as to put together a commission to study what slavery reparations should look like. Now, the only difference between there's a lot of differences specifically between what happened with the Japanese bill and HR 40 in itself. One of the things that the Japanese bill is that it was an open commission, and they actually went out and interviewed several people that can come to open sessions in order for them to weigh in on this particular event. In HR 40, you don't have that. They want closed sessions. Another thing is that they are not really specific on exactly who we're naming when it comes to the harms, because there are representatives of Narcan and Cobra who have this idea of like, okay, well, any person who identifies as Black or African American should be able to receive some type of, reparations, because slavery and racism hurts a lot of us, right? But that is not the intent of any reparations repair bill that has happened in the United States since 1789. All of them were specific. We named specifically the injured party, and then we went on to discover a discovery on exactly what the harm was, and then addressed it accordingly. And so that's just like a couple of tidbits, because I want Phil to weigh in on this too about HR 40. In actuality, there is a better bill. There is a better bill that's actually in the works that is trying to be pushed. However, HR 40 is just not a good one. But I will definitely say that having the conversation about really addressing the harms that have been done to African Americans, especially those who come from chattel slavery, because that was the original harm that was exacted on this group of people, has to be discussed. And we really have to address it in a holistic manner. And yeah, I'm going to shut up now. Phil, what you got to say?
It reminded me, I heard a documentary, like an NPR thing, where there's a lot of families in the South, a lot of African American families that were awarded land after the Civil War, and that meant everything to them and their family. And so they kept it in the family, and each child, each marriage, the land, everyone got to share in it. 20, 40, 50, 80, 100 people got to share in this land, and it became a home for everybody. Mm-hmm. And what would happen occasionally is that some family member who, didn't get along with everybody or just needed some money would sell their portion. So if there's 100 people involved, they would sell their 1% of land, and that person would then make a claim with the courts that they want to sell their 1%. And the other 99 people said, well, it's all one big thing. You can't just sell 1% of it. And they would hire attorneys, and the poor families that never really thought about dividing up the land get thrown into court and have to hire attorneys. And it ends up that the land gets sold and everybody gets cashed out, but the heritage is gone. What you had for your family is stripped away from you by kind of a weird quirk in how the land was or wasn't divided up correctly. And there's this endless string of disadvantages. Yeah, disadvantages, racism. You can't buy houses in neighborhoods. It hasn't happened to me lately, but the second or third house I wanted to buy, we actually had a real estate agent tell us which areas we probably should look at and which areas we should avoid because they had a lot of Black people in it. And I thought, what year are we in? It still happens today. And it doesn't mean that if you've done well and successful that you fought against the system and achieved it where everyone else could. I think sometimes there's other people that they can't. They don't have a way out of it. It's very easy to accept all the advantages that I have had and just say, well, I worked on really hard on top of that, and other people could work hard. But it's really hard to work hard when your parents have no money, when your parents leave you homeless, or you don't have any parents, or you're in a community with high drug problems. You're in a community that no one wants to teach. So how do you learn all the things? No one is there to help you. You're just every little step of the way, there's just a thumb on the scale pushing you down. And it's very easy for someone in a very luxurious position like myself to skip and not see all that. It's there. I've seen it. I've seen people being hired in the corporate world in actual big companies where a white man gets more than a black man, where a white man gets more than a white woman. And it's this little stuff that stacks up. I mean, that's all on top of chattel slavery, because if you start from that position, that's a hard place to go. And I think that we definitely should have the commission of some kind, and it should be examined. And I'm probably going to lean towards the fact that there's some money due. There's some financial assistance that's due to some people that have had the thumb on the scale pushing against them. And I think it's only fair. The last thought kind of in general in this concept, it is amazing how quickly people, and I don't mean just Americans, but this podcast is mostly watched by people in the United States, how quickly we can turn on the other. We got to move past that shit, people. Everybody's a human being. Watch more fucking Star Trek and Doctor Who if you have to. Get it into your head that, we're all trying to get along on this globe, and we should be fucking helping each other, not fighting people back that want to take what they want to take. They want to share in what we've got. We should be a little more interested in our fellow human beings. Sorry, my rant's over.
No, you're good. I've been caping for the Federation to come quick, fast, in a hurry for a while now, because this I don't particularly care for. I don't like personally going to the whole oppression Olympics, right? But it definitely has to be addressed that there are definitely divides when it comes to certain groups of people versus another, and a lot of those divides are designed. Especially when you were talking about the real estate agency, I had a conversation with a young person, because I'm going to call them young because they're younger than me, so they're a young person who is studying to be a lawyer. They're in law school right now, and then we had a debation about systemic racism, and they flat out told me that systemic racism doesn't exist anymore.
Oh my God.
And the argument was that point out one law that actually shows that this has happened, that this is happening now. And I said that, well, there were several policies and laws that actually help build in the issue concerning racism. However, what happens is that when you have things like redlining, when you have things like land
crack cocaine laws,
yes, when you have the war on drugs and then mass incarceration and you have the racial wealth gap, which is currently African Americans only hold less than 2% of the wealth in the entire nation, yet they make up almost 13% of the population. So the wealth share is not even compensatory to the population share. And we can really point to different events and design and that has happened, when it comes to these particular issues that has transpired. So, we can't just necessarily say, oh, racism is over, systemic racism is over because we had the Civil Rights Act of 1964, right? But we do definitely have a codifying of practices, as Phil even pointed out with his real estate agent saying, you don't necessarily want to move there because there's a lot of Black people that live there, right? Or and I can even point to other examples of real estate agents or even African Americans who have homes what they're trying to sell and their properties are valued way less than some of their white counterparts.
Yes.
So they can even I even have, this is an anecdote. My father was I talk about this. My father was a veteran and tried to use the GI Bill in order for him to buy a house, and he was denied and never told why. Come to find out, there was a lot of African American vets who did not get a chance to take advantage of the GI Bill, and not only that, is that as I started working even in the college industry when I first got out of school, found out that the GI Bill, there's benefits that not only would help the veteran, but help their children. So there could have been like some better, some benefits that I could have garnered from, you know, my father being a veteran that I never received. And unfortunately, this was a widespread practice. But, and I can go on, and I do apologize about that, guys. But, you know, but one of the things I will say, specifically going back to the article, is that when we are thinking about like Black History Month, and, you know, we use the shortest, coldest month of the year to talk about Black history. One of the things that I do want to remind people is that Black history is American history. You know, African Americans fought in every war. African American slaves built the White House. An African American man, Benjamin Banneker, designed the Capitol. We have been. I can list like a litany of inventions that were happening over by African Americans. I mean, the traffic light, the refrigerator, the ice cream scooper, for Pete's sake. Like, y'all know you want your ice cream, but you know, so, but one of the things that I would also say is that we had African American free thinkers that was very much so integral to this discourse of civil rights, like James Baldwin, like Hubert Harrison, who was like one of the first outspoken atheists, originally from Jamaica, who actually was pushing a socialist free thought movement here in the United States, like Butterfly McQueen, like Zora Neale Hurston, like Lorraine Hansberry, like Langston Hughes. Matter of fact, I had a poem that I wanted to read really quickly, and then I'm going to shut up. I promise you I will. But, you know, one of the things that he said in the poem is called Goodbye, Christ. He said, "Goodbye, Christ Jesus, Lord God Jehovah. Beat it on away from here now. Make way for a new guy with no religion at all. A real guy named Marx, communist, Lenin, peasant, Stalin, worker, me. I said me. Go ahead now. You getting in the way of things, Lord. And please take Saint Gandhi with you when you go. The Saint Pope Pius, the Saint Ami McPherson, and the big black Saint Becton on the consecrated dime. And step on the gas, Christ. Move." And
wow.
With that being said, I'm going to go around the room and you guys have your final thoughts, and we're going to move around.
The one thing that stuck in my mind when you were talking was especially about getting mine and not caring what the those that have less, whether or not they get theirs, or pushing people down to get ahead, is that we do not need to be in this situation where it's us or them, or it's other. We are not in a zero-sum game, you know. And when we look out, and 40% of the food that we produce here in the U.S. is going into the garbage before it goes onto the table. You can't tell me that we're in a zero-sum game. There's so much waste, and and I don't mean that just in that type of consumerism, but as so much a waste of opportunity when people are not provided with the basic needs that they have to not just survive, but excel. So I'm hoping that whether it be HR 40 or other legislation that's better will help facilitate that.
Yeah. And Phil,
right.
What you got?
I did my rant, and I don't have anything valuable enough to follow up the two of you, so I'm just going to leave it like that.
Well, I will just say this, that I want to also give another quote from Hubert Harrison. it should seem that Negroes of all Americans would be found in the free thought fold, since they have suffered more than any other class of Americans from the dubious blessings of Christianity. And I just wanted to say that with the rise of the nones, the agnostics, and the atheists in the Black community, my hope is that us who are not of the 79% of Christian believers, according to the Pew Research, would grow to have a voice and really have our thoughts and ideas represented on a larger scale in American society and worldwide.